Thank you, AT. And good evening to all of you. Hi, and welcome again to our webinar, our monthly webinar for August, and where we build on the other session on how to practically develop emotional intelligence in leadership. So while I give our speakers for today time to prepare themselves, I'll briefly give an introduction about Bujari High Impact Leadership Institute. So Bujari High Impact Leadership Institute is an online institute that provides training and incentive to young leaders across the world on how to tackle various challenges that we face these days as young people. Bujari High Impact Leadership Institute offers various courses and trainings such as result-based management, and in our monthly webinars, we cover a very wide variety and aspect, ranging from emotional intelligence that we have been dealing with for quite a while now, all the way to how to develop leadership as a whole that we have been discussing. And so today we will dive into the second session of how to practically develop emotional intelligence in leadership. And we had our last session last month, and we have a recorded session. We have a recorded session that is available in our YouTube channel. The link will be shared shortly after the speakers have begun speaking. And so in our last session, we dealt with self-awareness, recognizing how others feel, practicing active listening, and communicating clearly. So I will lightly touch on self-awareness and active listening. So these were tackled by our speakers, and the speakers that we had last time are the same speakers we have again who are with us this time. So in self-awareness, we basically talked about knowing who you are, knowing what you want, how you want it done, and in what way you see best that it can be done. That is how I can basically summarize self-awareness in one aspect. So the second thing I'll talk about is active listening. Here this was covered by the president of the institute, Dr. Peter Bujari, and where he gave an example of putting aside everything that you're doing at the moment to listen to someone who is in front of you wanting to be listened to. And this is a very good aspect of leadership in every aspect that we are in. So today we have a lot to cover. And so before we dive into that, I will introduce the speakers and let them say a very short word of hello to us before I give a briefing of today's webinar and we dive right into it for the interest of time. So the first speaker that I shall be introducing is Professor Kakoko. So for the interest of time, Prof, kindly please say hello to us and we move on. Thank you. You're welcome, sir.
Thank you, moderator. Hello to you all. I'm Deodatus Kakoko for those whom we are meeting for the first time. I'm a part of this presentation today, so I'll be presenting later. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And for the other speaker that will be with us today is the president and founder of Bujari High Impact Leadership Institute, and this will be Rev. Dr. Peter Bujari. You're welcome, sir, for a brief introduction.
Thank you, Tim. Good to see you again. My name is Peter Bujari. I'm the founder of the Institute, and happy to navigate through this second session again. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So I'll give a brief summary of what we will be covering today, and we will have 5 things to summarize our topic on how to practically develop emotional intelligence in leadership. One is how to stay positive, and the second is to emphasize. The third is be open-minded. The fourth is listening to feedback, and the fifth and the last is staying calm under pressure. I'll go through those again. The first is how to stay positive. The second is emphasizing. The third is open-mindedness. The fourth is listening to feedback. And the fifth is staying calm under pressure. And so before we go straight into the session of today, I'll briefly give some few housekeeping issues. You will find that there is a chat box in your screen. So that chat box you can use to give your comments. You can use to pose various questions that you would want answered by the speakers, and they shall be attended to. And if you have not muted your audio and you have not turned off your camera, kindly do so unless you are speaking to avoid any interruptions, and please do not share your screen. The people only allowed to share the screen are the moderator and speakers. So if you are neither of those, kindly do not share your screen unless permitted. And when there is time to ask a question and you feel like you want to express yours through your voice, you are allowed, but kindly raise your hand so that I can see and give you the floor. And so with that, I'll conclude by saying it's an honor to have all of you here. And so let's get right into it with our first topic of the day, which is how to stay positive, which will be attended to by Dr. Peter Bujari. You are warmly welcome, sir.
Lovely. Let me take this opportunity to thank my brother, Professor Kakoko, who has made time in his busy schedule to come and share insights and tools for navigating the high impact leadership with us. So thank you so much for making time. Let me also thank the moderator for agreeing to moderate our session. And finally, let me thank all the participants who have made time to agree to learn with us. This world is changing. It's very dynamic, and you cannot afford to remain where you are. Knowledge is power, and so it's very important to update the level of knowledge that you have. Let me quickly dive into a few things before I go into staying positive. Let me say that traditionally we have been measuring the intelligent quotient, or the IQ that we say. Una akili kwa kiasi gani? Recently, we are finding that una akili kiasi gani is not the best measure of you. The best measure of you is your emotion quotient. And why is that true? It's because this is what actually makes you successful at the college, at the place of work, or the relationship, etc., etc. So I want to say that many employers, and if you agree, we might be dealing with how emotional intelligence apply with employers. Many employers are looking for people with high emotional intelligence level than those with intelligent quotient. And I will explain as we dive in, you will see how important that one is. So when you have high level of emotion intelligence, it gives you the competitive edge. Wote mmemaliza degree pamoja, lakini wewe unaweza ukatengeneza mahusiano mazuri kuliko mwenzako. And this question normally is when we ask the applicants, how would you address a certain challenge? So the way you answer that question tells us the level of your emotional intelligence. But emotional intelligence also helps you to understand how you solve challenges. And so it is recognizing the challenge, it is understanding the challenge, and then in managing the challenge. So it's very important that we improve, and I'm personally learning through this improvement of the emotional intelligence. I'll now go into talking about staying positive directly into this area that I'm going to cover. Some people are negative and some people are positive. So, hey, Michelu, your mic. Thank you. So, the life comes to us with many challenges, many stressful circumstances from morning to evening. Leo toka umeamka asubuhi, I hope we have Swahili speaking people here. Toka umeamka asubuhi mpaka jioni, there are things that made you happy, but also things that made you a little bit angry or unpleasant situation. The question is, how do you remain positive, even in a challenging circumstances? That's the level of emotional intelligence. So you will therefore notice that when you stay positive in a challenging environment, you know, it helps you to master the situation, but it also helps those who are with you, okay? And so it increases your ability to solve problems that are with you. In terms of the benefits that staying positive it has, number one, it leads into job motivation. So you're motivated to continue doing what you're doing. I remember sometimes mazingira unayopita yanaweza yakakukosesha hamu kabisa ya kuendelea na kazi au ya kuendelea kusoma. When you stay positive, it increases your motivation to job, but also increases your job satisfaction. All right? So it is important that you stay positive, even in a difficult situation. Moderator, can you help those who are off, who have their mic on? Thank you. So let me proceed. So in terms of staying positive, there are some tips that I am happy to give. Okay? Some tips I'm happy to give. Number one is create a positive note in the morning when you wake up and tell yourself, this is my day and I'm going to do my best and maybe finish A, B, C, D. So in terms of what you have there in your plan. And secondly, concentrate on the constructive thoughts. So even when somebody appears to you that is challenging you, do not condemn that person. Fikiria all the time anawaza vizuri kuhusu wewe. Yani lengo lake ni zuri kuliko wewe, kwako wewe, mpaka pale ambapo utaprove kwamba kumbe lengo lake halikuwa zuri. Okay? The third tips that I can offer is accept responsibility and take control. So sometimes unafanya kitu and you find yourself that what you did was actually wrong. Okay. So don't run away from the problem or the challenge that you have created. Take responsibility over your action and then take control. In other words, develop strategies of avoiding the same situation next time. Okay. Let me give an example here. Those who have read the Bible, watakumbuka when God spoke to Adam, akamwambia msile matunda ya mti wa maarifa, etc., etc., etc. And then when Adam ate the fruits with his wife, Mungu alipomuuliza, where are you? So Adam's response was, I am hiding. And then God says, did you eat the fruits that I asked you not to eat? And so instead of Adam taking responsibility that he actually ate the fruits, instead of that, he says, ni mke wangu, it is my wife. So Adam shifts the responsibility from himself to the wife. Okay. And therefore, because he shifted the responsibility from himself into the wife, then he cannot take control of his own action. All right. So I want to emphasize, accept responsibility of what you said and what you did, and then take control of that. In other words, learn a mechanism to prevent the same thing to happen next time. Remember, you still have more years ahead of you. You can prevent something, you can make something better. The fourth tip that I would like to suggest is, appreciate the environment that you have. Appreciate regularly. When you have to appreciate the situation, you have to appreciate the creation, you have to appreciate somebody has done something good, please do that. The other part that might be helpful to maintain positivity is maintain the health style or health balance. In other words, balance your life. So work very hard and smart and get some time to do other things, the personal things that you do. So don't only do work, but create a balance. Whether you're swimming or you're running or you're doing something, but maintain the balance between the work and the personal, hobbies that you have. Build a strong relationship. There are some people who never create a relationship. Build a strong relationship, and that helps you to stay positive. Finally, I would like to suggest one last tip to stay positive. Approach your work with a purpose. Approach your work with a purpose. For the work or assignment that you approach it with a purpose. In other words, ask yourself, why am I here? The more questions you ask to yourself, the better reflection that you have. And I want to end there at this point in time. And, moderator, you can go ahead with the next speaker. But these are the suggestions that I have for staying positive. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for the very insightful talk. And so I think we have one question, which Prof. Kakoko, I think you can attend to that. Then you will just go on to the next point. The question is, how do you maintain positivity in a negative environment? I think you can just answer that, then proceed to the next.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Moderator, and I'm honored to get this opportunity to answer that particular question. You see, also, let me go straight to saying that the context where we live is also positive in terms of anything that we want to achieve. So the where we live, the context, the environment has a lot of positivities, but we tend to see things negatively. And that being the case, you may not fail to do or to look things positively in any context. It depends on the spectacles that you have. If you have blue spectacles, you see things are blue. If you have red spectacles, you're going to see that things are ready. So what you have, your cognition, what you want to see, it's what you are going to see. It's like people who believe in things like the witchcraft. It's people who create such type of thinking. And when you create such a thinking, you see it. If you don't, if you're a reader, for example, we're talking about readership. If you think like I shouldn't treat these people positively, then you are going to treat them negatively. So there is no any environment where you cannot you cannot see things positively, that because you say or you think like this is the negative context or the negative environment. As the tips given that have just been given by the former speaker, those are the key tips that you can use to look at things more positively than negatively. And I like it mostly because there's a kind of positive psychology that we are currently trying to tell people. Though natural human beings are sometimes negative, as the former speaker just said. Badala ya kusema nimegonga mlango, unasema mlango umenigonga. That's a typical kind of the language. And when you look at the discourses, the language that human beings use is a such kind of the language. Hatusemi nimegonga mlango, tunaishia kusema mlango umenigonga. So if you look the other way, then such negative aspect will be eliminated. Now, having said so, let me talk about the aspect, one of the key aspects, the practical steps of the empath. Empath is key to emotional intelligence. As the former speaker just said, emotional intelligence is key. And when you sit, think about it loudly, you see that we have a lot to learn about emotional intelligence. It means a lot in our life, because whatever we do, our success, our failures, our relations especially, depend much more on our emotional intelligence. Now, empath is one of the key components where it's the ability of understanding and share feelings of others or with others. And this is specifically by means of knowing how other people think or feel, or the capacity to place ourselves in others' person's shoes. This is common in the life. When you're a reader, for example, sometimes you take your position. Formerly, I was the director for continuing education and professional development. I used to tell my secretary to come punctually at the workplace. But later on, I realized she's a single mother. She has a baby. Sometimes she has to nurse that baby before she comes to the office. And I yell on her and she's late. But later on, when I decide to sit and start thinking about her, suppose I was the same mother. Suppose I was nursing that baby. Could I also come punctually at the workplace? Now, through putting wearing her shoes, then I came to realize that perhaps she's struggling, but she cannot make it. So my hearing stopped because I was getting mad. It helped me on the one hand, and it helped her on the other hand. Remember, empathy is quite different from sympathy. Sympathy is when you believe you are that person. So, for example, if it's a cross person, that person is crying, you start crying. But for the empathy, is quite different. You start taking those feelings so that you resolve the situation, you change the situation. And this is practical in the leadership and the management. And you can take steps if you come to understand about the issues of empathy. For example, a leader who empathizes with an employee going through personal crisis may offer different arrangements, allow employees to balance their responsibilities, cope with the situation, and ultimately help the person in a growth in that organization. And this is important to the readers so that readers can see, cannot hurt those people, but they help them in the process in terms of coping. And as the former speaker said, this is important to make connections with the others, including the subordinates. Now, when it comes to the tips of empathetic life, we all need to learn something. We all need to pick something. The first and the most important thing is to understand somebody else's point of view. And this may happen, for example, during the arguments. When you make some arguments, You may learn as a reader or as any person, as a civilian, you may learn that when you make arguments with the others, let not only your argument dominate. Let not only what to feel, think, understand others, understand their background, understand their perspectives. And this will help you to keep calm, as we'll be talking later, to understand why do these people think so. I have been working recently with the Maasai communities who are suffering from trachoma. They don't wash their face, they don't use toilets. But when I went to those communities, I thought that these are the silly people who don't deserve any mess. But later on, I came to realize that they have good reasons. It's for me to learn about their good reasons for not using toilets, good reasons for not washing their face. So that's a detailed story that I cannot tell now. But learn also to feel guilty when things are not, when you have realized that, for example, you have hurted somebody or there is misunderstanding between you and the others. It's critically important to do one of the way is to do self-reflection. Doing self-reflection that had I been on his or her side, what could also have I done? Mimi naweza nikawa yeye, mimi ningekuwa yeye, hivi ningeweza kufanya nini? And that's critically important. That reflection will help you also to treat people fairly. I know sometimes as readers, we may commit things that perhaps that may even harm others. You make the decision, but the decision you make now, you come to realize that that was wrong. Now, you need to feel guilty and later on to learn that if you were that person who has been hurted, what could happen? Now, that's critically important. So, in conclusion, when we lack empathy in our readership, we are unable to develop or nurture those interpersonal connections with the others, to be in harmony with the others. And this can lead to strained relationship, broken trust, loss of relationship, and the isolation with others. Let me end here by now. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you, sir, very much for the very insightful presentation that you have made. And let me remind our participants, how do you ask a question? There is a chat down there where you can type your question, or if you prefer to speak out the question, you can, if you prefer to speak out the question, you can raise your hand and I will allow you to do so. So the next thing that you're going to be discussing is open-mindedness. And so we have one question. I think no one else can see this. This was sent directly to me. It says, how can we overcome barriers to empathy, such as judgment and prejudice? I think I'll direct this question to Dr. Bujari as he goes straight into speaking about open-mindedness. Welcome, sir. The question is, how can we overcome barriers to empathy, such as judgment or prejudice?
Lovely. So let me thank also Prof for his insightful presentation on the empathy. I want to highlight a few things there before I proceed. Bujari High Impact Leadership Institute considers leadership at 3 levels. Number 1, leadership at individual level. Every person on this planet, according to our theory, which is also consistent with the theory of, the theory of current leadership theories, every person is a leader. So when we talk about leadership, we do not talk about your manager, we do not talk about your principal, your headmaster. We're talking about every person as a leader. And second level of leadership is macro level, meso level, and then finally the macro level. But what I want to say is that every person is a leader. We consider every person as a leader. And so the topic that Prof just shared of empathy is normally not understood in the concept of leadership. So I think because I am not the principal of a school of medicine, for instance, I am not a leader. When I am a worker, mimi ni mwajiriwa wa taasisi fulani, I don't consider myself as a leader. Please understand that you are a leader at the level where you are. And so when we talk about empathy, you also have to practice empathy as an employee. For instance, as an employee, you need to ask yourself, what if I was the principal? Mwanafunzi akifanya hivi, what would I have done? Kama wewe ni mwajiriwa, jifanye wewe ndio mwajiri. Okay, so that's the empathy. So kama ningekuwa mwajiri, mfanyakazi anafanya hivi ninavyofanya, je, ningemfanyaje? So the question of empathy runs across everybody. And in this concept, leadership as at individual level or micro level, meso level for a small group, and a macro level for a bigger group. So do not come out of the session thinking that empathy only applies to your manager, okay? No, it applies to everybody, the staff, the manager, the director, the executive director, everybody. It applies all across from the bottom to the top. The moment you realize that you are a leader, and please join us when you have a course to understand the levels of leadership. When you understand that you are a leader, then it begins making sense to you, okay? So always understand you are a leader. Number two, the question that, before I address the question is, I wanted to say, if you want to grow professionally and grow your relationship, emotional intelligence or the empathy particularly is very important to practice and increase. Let me now address the question that's addressed to me is, how do we, empathize when we have obstacles? We empathize because there are challenges, there are obstacles. That is why we learn to empathize. We learn to empathize so that we can minimize the harm to others and to ourselves. So when you empathize, it is not only positive to others, it is also positive to yourself. So how do you do that? Always look at the positive aspect, even in the midst of negativity. Okay, please listen very carefully here. Even in the midst of negativity, look for the positive because they are there. Many times we focus on the negatives and completely forget about the positivity. Even in the midst of the negativity, please look for the positivity. And as you do that, you will appreciate that there actually many positive in the negative situation that you didn't see because of the paradigm, because of the way you look at things, because of the way you think. So how do you do that? Basically look for the positivity even in the midst of the negativity. Now, okay, so let me go to the area that I wanted to talk, and it's basically being openness. As I want to talk about being open or openness or open-minded, my professor several years back, talked about ethnocentrism in psychology and sociology, I think. And what it means is being judgmental. I mean, thinking that others are wrong, always wrong, and you are the only right. So as we learn about improving our emotional intelligence, it is important to balance between what you personally perceive and what others perceive. So open-mindedness, we basically define it as the ability to be less judgmental. Every human being is judgmental, okay? Every human being is judgmental in one way or the other. Every person on this planet Earth is judgmental in one way or the other. And so your ability to be less judgmental, okay, and be more inquisitive is your open-mindedness, okay? So to be open-minded, one thing that you want to practice is a good listener. Be a good listener, okay? So in other words, listen to what your colleague or your fellow has to say before you cut them off, okay? So your ability to understand the other's perspective. So Prof just gave an example of a secretary coming late. And when he tried to understand her situation, she found that, so she was in a certain circumstances that could not allow her to be as punctual as he wanted him to be. So your ability to understand the other's perspective, okay? But being open-minded is also being open to learning new things, okay? The steps to being open-minded, the practical tips that I can offer. The first one is be aware of your own bias. You know, every person has some form of bias, okay? So be aware of your own bias so that you can manage your own biases. For instance, if you think that a woman does not deserve to speak in a meeting, if you believe that as your own bias from your cultural background, then when you understand that, you begin managing that bias, okay? So that's being open-minded. But the other is be open to consider the opposite viewpoint. Even when you have a certain stand that this is the correct way of doing things, this is the correct way of thinking things, listen to the second viewpoint of a colleague or another person. Now, that is a second tip to being open-minded, okay? In relation to that, question yourself, why do I think this is the only way to do things? Okay, why do I think so? Is there not another theoretical background? Maybe there is, and I need to embrace that as well. Okay, so the third one I would offer is reframe your negative thought. The negative thought that you have, okay, begin to reframe it, put it in another frame by saying, what if? What if? What if? So by doing that, you are kind of questioning yourself and allowing yourself to learn more from others, allowing yourself to listen what others say, allowing yourself to understand the other frame of reference or the other perspective. That also increases your ability to tolerate others, okay? Ability to tolerate others. These are the practical tips that I may offer on the being open-minded. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the insight on open-mindedness. And participants, I again encourage us to ask questions if we have any questions. And so I see in the chat box that we still don't have any questions. So if you have questions on how to have a positive mindset, you can still ask. If you have questions on anything, you can still ask. It's allowed, but let it be based on emotional intelligence. And so the next part of our webinar will be on listening to feedback. So after we've been told about open-mindedness, Prof, please kindly take us on how to listen to feedback, bearing in mind the concept of open-mindedness. You're welcome, Prof.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator, and thank you, the former presenter, for the good concepts. First, for writing the key concept of readership that takes a broader sense. Really, we are all readers, and if we are all readers, we need to have these skills. Some of the skills, these skills, you may get them in the classroom, formal teaching using formal curriculum. But some of these skills will never get them in the classroom like that. It's through such informal kind of interactions like we are doing here. But again, it's through people reading. So there are different ways of attaining such things. The other time we talked about active reasoning. I remember Dr. Biari presented about active reasoning. How do people reason actively? How do you reason what others are saying, which is a critically important aspect, but sometimes we fail to practice. Reasoning is not an easy skill. Talking might be much more easier than reasoning, because in most cases, you want to express your views. You don't want to reason what the others are saying. And this is what makes reasoning much more easier than talking. And in this case, we are coming to the other block of reasoning to feedback. This is not giving feedback. Remember, the concept here is reasoning to feedback. When I was pondering about this, I said it could be very easy talking about giving feedback, because most of us could want to give feedback to make sure that others reason to what you are telling them. But now, as a reader, as a person at any leadership level, as Dr. Biari said, really, it could be, it's difficult to reason to what the others are saying, especially when it's a matter of feedback. And when I say feedback, here I allude to things, reasoning, getting what the others are telling us about our actions, about our behaviors, whatsoever that we have done. And people telling you, then it's like swallowing the bitter pills sometimes. But not always the bitter pills. Sometimes, as we said, the positive psychology, the positive thinking. Some of the feedback might be positive. So feedback might take a form of negative perspective, but it might also take a positive perspective. And when you give feedback, remember to do so. When I examine students, I've been examining students at the master's, at the PhD level. And one of the things I realize when people go to the podium to examine, for example, a PhD student, people will always allude to what have you done wrong in this dissertation? You see, look at your background of the study, look at this and this. People might go to things which are negative. And this is normal, I'm saying as a teacher, but when you look at their real life, you realize when people give feedback, they would always go to the negative issues. So we have to also run to the positive feedback. However, in this case, you are getting the feedback, you are not giving the feedback. You don't have the choice on the feedback that you are getting. And this is critically important, especially to the formal readers in the organizations, where really they might not wish to get those negative feedback. They would want everything to be positive. Now, reasoning is the process of reflecting back what the other person said to check out your understanding. So it's a process. Reasoning is a process where you actively engage your self. And why is it important? When shared in the right way, feedback helps strengthen the quality of the relationship that you have with the others. If you get it positively, you pick it positively, then the feedback might, the reasoning to the feedback might help you, for example, improve, might help you to change. Wewe bwana, kuna vitu hivi vinakuharibia katika maisha. Acha, punguza haya. So all these things might be important. And this is critical, especially when people don't take time to think about themselves. Self-criticism might be difficult, but others, of course, if you cannot blow your own trumpet, then others are going to blow it for you. So if you don't tell yourselves, yourself about something, what is it wrong? What is it good? Do you have the courage of telling yourself? You might not. So others would give you the feedback. So it's very important. If you are to reason carefully, you're going to have to create good relationship. Now, how do we do it effectively? What are the key tips? It's one of the key tips to reasoning to feedback is reasoning to the feedback given in non-interruptive manner, in a non-judgmental manner. So when people give us feedback, we need to persevere, we need to reason, we need to tolerate and start digesting what are they telling us. That Dr. Bujeru, hiki na hiki, ulifanya hiki. So you started doing the reflection, and see what might be wrong. Why do people think it in that way? The second way, make sure that you understand what is being said before responding to the feedback. Normally, when you find the word feedback, it means it's a two-way communication. It's sending, giving, and getting. It's that model where there is a two-way communication. And you find that if you want to really get it correctly, first try to understand, which is the cognitive process, something going through your brain, allow something to go through your brain so that you understand. Then the third, be aware of your responses, as your body language and the tone of voices often speak louder than words. The things that may talk more than when you talk. And I always cite examples of, for example, people in the customer care. People in the customer care, I go around this country. And one of the things I always see when I go to the hotel, when I go to the restaurant, when I go anywhere, I see how these people are treating me. You realize it's like, kuta mhudumu, I say, naweza nikapata chumba kipo. The way this person is looking at you already shows, even if the room is there, then it means it's like this person is like telling you that I don't want you here. I don't feel like. So even in terms of feedback, if I give you feedback, I might see that you seem not to accept my feedback. You seem not to enjoy my feedback. So that goes concomitantly. When I talk about that, it's not only the verbal language. It might be also a matter of the body language. For example, there are small tactics that perhaps people sometimes don't take seriously, like the eye contact. Maintaining the eye contact is critically important. And if, for example, since I'm a psychologist, one of the great psychologists has ever taught me said that, you see, if you want to learn, is this person talking the truth? Look at that person. Maintain eye contact. The person who has done something wrong may not maintain the eye contact. Will start looking away when you start looking at that particular person. So if you are a frank person, I'm giving you the right feedback. I see the way you look, your eye contact will tell me something. But also having relaxed the exposure, slightly leaning towards that person, the way you communicate. When you get feedback, don't be like sometimes in our offices, we have the computer between, you are talking, somebody is there. So your posture will tell also a lot that really you are reasoning, you are following up about that feedback. Nodding and facial expressions these are the things that will tell also the minimal encouragers. You see, you realize, or you get it positively. You get it positively that you are really listening and you are getting feedback positively. Yeah, in conclusion, receiving feedback is something that need to be learned and practiced. It's not something that comes automatically. People would want to feel like getting feedback. I just listen to what you want to tell me. If I'm the one to choose, if I don't want, but that process is a skill that need to be learned, need to be practiced, and if you practice it, you come to master it automatically. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you, sir, for the very good presentation, detailed, having a lot of materials that we can gain from. So we started at 5:40 and we are going to finish at 6:40, which gives us an allowance of 5 minutes to finish our last discussion for today and the last part of the topic, practically developing emotional intelligence and leadership, which is staying calm in terms of pressure. So, Prof. Kakoko, there is a question for you. How can we sharpen our active listening techniques, especially on voice tones? And after that, I think this last part was to be co-shared. So I'll welcome Dr. Bujari to start on it, and Prof, you can summarize at the end. You're welcome, Prof, to answer the question.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. It's true that the important skill is how do we sharpen our skills in terms of reasoning to the feedback. And among other things, I said when I talked about those tips to the reasoning. You see, sometimes I tell people that people make noise. And when I tell people that they make noise, they sometimes look at me, they say that I'm not making noise, I'm not talking. But I say, no, you're making noise. Because when I'm telling you something, I realize there is something going on through your brain. When I tell you that, you see, there is something wrong you have done. Angalia hiki kitu bwana, kina matatizo. This thing, you are a part of this problem. Unajua ulivyofanya hiki na hiki na nini, ndicho kilileta matatizo yote. But you realize the time you are saying so, the person I'm talking to is trying to think something, is trying to defend, is trying to answer. There are a lot of things going on through the brain of him or her. Now, the most important thing is, one of the key things is to make sure that when somebody is communicating, when somebody is giving feedback, make sure that you disengage with anything else. You make sure that you get focused. Make sure that you try to reflect it. You try to understand. As I said, it's a process, it's a skill. It's not one day thing. It's a process that one can learn. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for attending to that question. Dr. Bujari, you're welcome to start off with the last part of the webinar today.
Lovely. Thank you again. Thank you, Prof, for the insightful presentation. Thank you, the moderator of the session. I realize we're running short of time. I wanted to say one or two things on receiving feedback, particularly the negative feedback. Positive feedback is probably easy to receive, but negative feedback is challenging to many of us. Two things I want to say. Please consider every feedback is an opportunity to grow. All right. Consider every feedback that you receive, as negative as it may be, is an opportunity to grow. The moment you receive feedback with that mindset, you have won the battle. You have won the battle just before the day begins. Secondly, take feedback, as negatively as it may be, as an opportunity for improvement. Remember, no person is perfect. So do not try to defend yourself, but rather take the feedback, as negative as it may be, as this is extremely important for the person with a high level of emotional intelligence. There are a lot of pressure that we come through, could be at the college, at university, could be at the workplace, could be at home. Your ability to stay calm under pressure defines your leadership ability to handle the situation, your ability to navigate through the complexities of leadership. And so it is extremely important to stay calm when the pressure is high. As a leader of yourself, and also as a leader to others, when you are able to stay calm under pressure, it reassures to yourself, reassures others that it is going to be okay. Remember, if you as a leader seem worried or you have panicked, then the people that you're leading, they will even panic more than you have done. Okay, so practice into stay calm under pressure takes a different set of practice, but I will offer very quickly a few things. Number one, take a deep breath as it happens. Take a deep breath as you are in the challenge, the pressure that you are in. The deep breath helps you to stabilize yourself and think about the best option before you actually panic. Okay. So the other thing that I can offer is self-care. Somebody asked a question: what role does self-care play in staying positive? I think I did answer this one. I said balance your work and other personal hobbies so that your mood can be balanced. Okay? So self-care is extremely important. For you to also stay calm under pressure, reflect on the positive side of the challenge or of the pressure. Okay. There could have been other challenges that happened of the same. Do not focus on the past, but focus on the current. This is another tip that I can offer. Healthy habits helps you to stay calm under pressure. And finally, because of time, always understand, this one I will win. This one I will win. And that helps you to relax your hormones, relax your hormones and other secretions that are in the body. In terms of the body posture, finally, sometimes negative feedback can be harmful, so as you stand, do not stand with your legs close to each other, but stand with your legs apart. When you stand with your legs apart, It gives you the flexibility and the balance of your body. All right. So these are some of the quick tips that I can offer for the staying calm under pressure. Thank you so much. I should end there.
Thank you, sir. Prof, if you have any final comments on staying calm under pressure, you're welcome briefly.
Just one thing I would like to add up. Thank you, Dr. Bujari, for the presenting on staying calm under pressure, because human life has a lot of pressure. So you cannot say that perhaps I'm not going to face such a situation. So as Dr. Bujari said, it's something we all need to learn. But in addition to what he said, staying calm under pressure, you need to think clearly. So to think objectively, analyze the situation, and making the best possible decision. It's in our hands how we make things, how we tackle the problem. When I was doing teacher education, I was told that you see, teachers are told that ukitaka kumpiga mtoto hesabu moja mpaka 10. Hesabu 1, 2, 3. The time you reach 10, you haven't slapped that child. You will never slap that child. You not be that emotional. It's a component on how to train yourself in the context of emotional intelligence. Avoiding becoming reactive, which is costing a lot of people this world. Some people have killed, you see things are happening in the world. People are killing each other. Sometimes not that they don't think objectively, they don't think clearly, they are much more obstructed when they take the action. So it's very important to think more objectively. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you. Prof, before you leave, maybe you can take this question as we close. How can I address a problem related to conflict of interest, say between a leader in higher position and a lower position leader? You can finish with that, then I will close.
Thank you. Talk about the conflict of interest. Again, it's something that needs somebody to think objectively, because the conflict of interest is when you are an interested party in that particular aspect, in that particular thing, in that particular action. But you try to think in an abstracted manner that, you see, I'm going to do it, but from the other corner that you are a part of it. And sometimes in psychology, we say that sometimes you might end up feeling guilty. And when you feel guilty, it means something happened inside you, and you are getting much more, you are much more affected. So the conflict of interest is something, that's why we always say that it's very important to declare the conflict of interest, because at the end of the day, it makes you feel well, it makes you feel fine. It's a kind of the thing we call emotional catharsis, the pent-up of emotions. You feel like, yes, I'm relieved, having put it in a right way. So it's people to train themselves. As I said initially, it's people to train themselves to be much more objective, but also people appreciating that it does harm than good. If you come to understand that it does harm than good, giving a position to my son that is somebody else deserved it, at the end of the day, I start feeling like, yes, I did something wrong and I cannot be happy in the life. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. And with that last question, we've come to the end of our webinar. I would like to thank all the participants that have been with us from the beginning of the first session, and for the participants that have been with us from the beginning of this second session, and even for the ones that have joined over time. And I would like to humbly thank all the speakers that have devoted their time today to be here with us, and the support team behind the success of these webinars and all other webinars. You are all very welcome. The last housekeeping issue that I would like to put across is that there will be a feedback survey that will be shared to you through your emails. So I would humbly request that you please give us your feedback so that we can tailor our webinars, our courses, and the way we do things to the best that we can to fit your interests. And with that said, I would like to thank you and bring this webinar to an end. Thank you all very much and have a lovely evening.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.